Today, we're going to talk about ethics of using generative AI in publications, and I hope that we'll have a nice um, discussion and conversation around the use of generative AI in publications and the ethical issues and other kinds of challenges around it. My research is funded, and I'm very grateful for the funders. I think at this point, everybody knows that AI is being used more and more in research, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to realize that this is only going to grow. Down below here, I have this graph that is taken from a Nature article that was published towards the end of last year. At the time, the estimate was that 17% of researchers used chatbots or generative AI on a daily basis. 43% used it weekly, 23% monthly, and 17% less than once a month. This is a lot of usage for a technology that was introduced only about a year ago or 2 years ago. At the time when the survey was conducted, it was only 1 year since the release of the first chatbot, ChatGPT. And if you look at research publications and presentations and the stories we hear from researchers, it seems like this technology is being used in many, many, many research contexts. Almost in all research contexts, it's being used, and it's being used for various different tasks, like from data curation, data cleaning, analyzing and interpreting data and images, modeling, developing hypotheses, refining hypotheses, developing code, debugging code, documenting code, generating synthetic data, which is a huge issue, writing and editing scientific papers, which is the focus of the conversation today, and many, many, many other use cases. So the conclusion we can make from this is that AI is not going anywhere. And generative AI is here to stay. This is only going to be used more and more, and it's going to be integrated into our existing workflows. And sooner or later, it will also be integrated into Microsoft Word, which makes our use of it even much easier. Yeah. Now, at this point, I just like to engage with some of you who uses AI at the moment or generative AI. And if you don't mind sharing, just in very brief words, just explain for what purpose you use it, if you don't mind. Anyone?
Hi, good morning. I use generative AI not so much for my research. I use it both in my studies as well as at my job. Really, for my studies, I have a struggle with that because I am concerned about the ethics of using it, which is one of my reasons for being here. But I do sometimes use it to help me organize my thoughts or to help me with outlines or frameworks, things of that nature. But I'm still not even really comfortable with that. But in my day-to-day work, I use it for helping with reference letters. I use it for kind of, putting a little bit of bread on the meat of my emails if I'm responding to emails and things of that nature.
Right. These are all very good examples. Like I've heard from many people who use it for reference letters in particular, and also, improving, enhancing, adding fluff to emails, or however you want to call it. A lot of people are doing that as well. Um, and your other use case was about almost like brainstorming or using it as a sort of sparring partner, getting your thoughts together, receiving feedback. These are all great use cases. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else? Do we have any other volunteer who wants to share how they use AI?
Yeah, I use it. Oh, sorry.
Okay. I use it for, I'm Theodora Leventuri, Medical Physics Program Director and Professor of Physics, and I use it for both, for reviewing papers, I use it for publications, I use it for research, and in our program, the medical physics, we have a special required seminar that the students have take, all students, because they are doing research, and that is research including patients' data in the health industry. So they have to know a lot about it, and it's required by the CAMPEP, the accreditation agency. And we have a professor who is also medical physicist. He's adjunct professor and research affiliate here, who is teaching that. And we also have a medical physicist, Wazir Mohammad, who is using it extensively.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. We had someone else who wanted to chime in and share their use case.
Yeah, my name is Ravi Behara, College of Business. I use it to, review research articles when I'm doing a lit review, and I got 100 articles to read. I will quickly run through them to see is it something worth reading or not, and filter it that way. Let it summarize for me, read the summary, and then say, is this worth reading? And then read it or put it aside. So it really is very productive to help get through a lot of information quickly.
Mm, True, true. And that is also one of the common use cases, as I will show in a further slide. But thank you so much. So this is all shows that different people are using it for different reasons, and this is only going to grow. So it is to our benefit to actually learn more about how these systems may work in our context, and what kind of limitations and risks we might have, and how we are going to disclose our use of these systems. So this increased use of AI in research made me and one of my colleagues, David Resnick, to write about this. We wrote this paper, which is quite a long paper that was published this year in AI and Ethics journal. It's titled "The Ethics of Using Artificial Intelligence in Scientific Research: New Guidance Needed for a New Tool." In the paper, we argue that we don't need new norms. Like at the moment, we have certain norms about research ethics and integrity, like I don't know, you got to be honest, you got to be careful, you have to be respectful. We don't need one of these new values or virtues, but what we need is further specification of existing values and virtues, like be honest in reporting the use of AI, or be open to disclose your use of AI, and use it carefully. And and we mentioned some of the limitations, and we explain exactly what are some of the risks of using these models in research. Um, just to provide a short summary of some of the issues we mentioned in the paper. Some of the ethical issues we're currently dealing with, many of you might know, pertains to biases that are quite prevalent and sometimes discussed at length in all kinds of discussions about the use of AI. We know that the training data that may have been used to train AI models could be biased. For instance, when it comes to genetics data, we know that a lot of genetics data that we already have is very much biased towards white European people, and that is a form of bias. And there's all kinds of discussions around how to circumvent or reduce biases, but at the moment, bias is still one of the major challenges when it comes to using AI. We also have random errors. The difference between biases and random errors are that biases are still errors, but biases are errors that have a discernible pattern. We can discern exactly what the pattern is, whereas with random errors, we can't. So, for instance, an example of random errors is fabricated citations or hallucinated citations that are generated by systems like ChatGPT. We don't know exactly what the pattern is in terms of how inaccurate those fake citations are, and that is why we call them a random error. They are still detrimental to research practices, but in the paper we argue that biases are more detrimental because they have a consistent negative effect on certain cohorts and populations in that are maybe affected by research. We also have research misconduct. We believe that AI could potentially create more challenges when it comes to research misconduct. One of them is plagiarism, as many of you might know. If you use AI to generate text, we cannot always be 100% sure that this sentence is actually plagiarized or not. And that is going to remain a challenge. Recently, about, I think, 10 days ago, Google made the announcement that their Gemini model is now going to be using watermarking technology, which is basically like a code that can determine whether a piece of text is plagiarized or not. So that is a good development, but we are still a long way from creating systems that can detect these generated text or identify them in a bulletproof way. Another challenge is the black box problem, and this is one of those issues that um, affects many of our existing values and virtues that pertain to research ethics and integrity. For instance, the norms around transparency, the norms around openness, honesty. We want research to be explainable. We want research to be understandable. And when we have a black box in a system, when we have a black box in our research workflow, we cannot always be 100% sure that we are able to explain our research in a meaningful way. And this is also has a knock-on effect on, for instance, our consent procedures, because we want our research to be explainable. We want people to understand exactly what is happening to their data and how we are coming to the conclusions that we are. But when we have a black box, this is not happening. AI and confidentiality, this pertains to people who may use AI for instance, analyzing data that may have sensitive information. I've heard some people who may use AI, generative AI, to write emails. Like if you have some names in your email, that may compromise confidentiality, that may compromise people's privacy, and so on. Or if you have like if you're writing, for instance, a reference letter or recommendation letter for someone else, you may want to be very careful about how you present the information, what kind of input you provide to generative AI. You are not supposed to add people's names in there, because that may compromise their privacy. And the reason why we are so careful and so like anal about it is that we don't know what they do with our data. We don't know what these AI models do with our data. Recently, one of the top managers at OpenAI said that, yeah, we use these prompts automatically to improve users' experiences and so on. And that was like an eye opener for many people, because up until that moment, not so many people within that rank had specifically said that our prompts are going to be used by these models. So it's very important to be careful about what kind of information we provide, because we provide to generative AI, because they may use our information in ways that we may not agree with. Another challenge is moral agency. And this is one of those things that specifically about in the context of research is very important. AI models don't have moral agency. They don't have consciousness. They don't have free will. And that is why everything that they do is basically on us. If they make any mistake, if they generate any biased or inaccurate analysis, we are ultimately responsible and accountable for their mistakes. So in a very weird way, they make all kinds of contributions that would have even qualified a person as an author. Like if a human being made the kind of contributions and the extent of contributions that AI can do to our research, we would gladly make them an author. But because AI models don't have the moral agency, we cannot name them an author, and as a result, they are not also responsible or accountable for any of the mistakes. It is on us. So this is another layer of complexity when it comes to using AI in research. And lastly, it's about people like me and Courtney and all the other people who may be involved in research ethics and research integrity education. We believe that the ethics of using AI should be incorporated into existing ethics education practices. But this is challenging because this is like a moving target. It's moving very fast, and it's very technical. And if you want to engage researchers in a meaningful way, you have to be very well educated about these systems and how to use them, and challenges and limitations and risks and so on. And this takes a lot of time. So these were some of the challenges, but in addition to these, we figured that disclosure of using AI is also quite challenging because AI may be used in different stages of the research life cycle for different reasons. And it's important to cite the use of AI where we can, but this is not always straightforward. To address some of these challenges in 2023, we wrote this paper that's titled The Ethics of Disclosing the Use of Artificial Intelligence Tools in Writing Scholarly Manuscript. And this was published in the Journal of Research Ethics. And we basically debunked the idea that, AI cannot be an author. And we went to great length to explain why AI cannot be authored and how should AI be disclosed if it's used for writing purposes in scholarly publications. Um, the paper was well received, but it didn't really solve a lot of the problems, unfortunately, as you can imagine. And I'll explain what I mean with that shortly in terms of how it did not solve a lot of problems. Um, so at the moment, we know that among its many applications, helping researchers with writing and refining text is the most common use case for generative AI in research. Now, I've taken this from the same survey, from the same Nature survey that was published last year. They had a sample size of more than, I think, 3,800, so 3,800. And it was a very representative sample from 93 countries, 51% female, 27% racial or ethnic minority, so very representative. Um, and as you can see, refining text was the most common use case. And after that, code generation, finding, summarizing the literature I was mentioned by one of you, preparing manuscripts, preparing presentation material, improving experimental protocol and other. And I'm sure this has changed. Like if you were to do the same survey today, the responses would be different and the use cases would be different. But I'm also sure that refining text and generating text would still be the most common use case. In the previous slide, I said that the paper that we wrote was well received, but it didn't solve a lot of problems. And now I'm going to address why. That's partly because we witnessed a lot of quick changes in policy, and also we saw and still see ambiguous and inconsistent policies. So, for example, like this is, I think, the most interesting example that I can name. Journal Science. They initially established a sort of draconian policy and said use of generative AI for any purpose in our papers is banned. You are not allowed to use generative AI, whether to write or to generate images, not at all. You're not allowed. And they said that it is prudent to wait until we have more clarity about what uses the scientific community will, what within the scientific community, what use cases would be more common. And only then we can say, we can come up with further policy. And then after that, um, they changed the policy. And I assume that they adopted a sort of cautious approach first because they were concerned about, I don't know, all the things I said, authorship, bias, integrity, and so on. But then they changed it. And they changed it and they said, well, you can actually use AI-assisted technologies in research, like for instance, for preparing manuscripts, as long as you disclose the use of AI in a very transparent way. And what they meant with that was that you should detail your use of generative AI in both the cover letter and the acknowledgement section, and include comprehensive information in the method section, such as the full prompts, like all the prompts that you used with systems like ChatGPT. You have to submit those to Science if you want to publish in Science and if you want to openly disclose that you use generative AI. Which is, I think, and all of these changes happen in like a couple of months, like maybe 3 or 4 months. And regarding inconsistencies, I have two good examples. Some of you might know, when it comes to discussions about authorship and guidelines and criteria about authorship, there are certain international organizations that have been very authoritative and provide all kinds of guidelines. One of them is the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, that's ICMJE. They say that use of AI for writing assistance, and I'm quoting, writing assistance, should be disclosed in the acknowledgement section. But then we have another organization, also authoritative, WAME, World Association of Medical Editors. They say the use of generative AI, quote, to draft new text should be mentioned in the acknowledgement section. Now, the difference in terminology may be very subtle, but I think it may lead to confusion regarding what kind of disclosure what kind of disclosure is necessary. To be more specific, I think ICMJE's phrasing would be interpreted as sort of a little bit broader, from simple grammar checks to more extensive editing. But WAME's specification of drafting new text implies a more significant contribution that may exclude minor generative AI interventions. And this nuanced distinction, I think, can create all kinds of uncertainty about when am I supposed to disclose my use of AI? And I think this is also this kind of inconsistency is also present in about other use cases. For instance, when it comes to using generative AI for data analysis, the ICMJE suggests that generative AI use for data analysis should be disclosed in the method section, but WAME recommends that generative AI use should be disclosed both in the abstract and in the method section. And we also see this kind of inconsistencies at a publisher level, unfortunately. For example, Springer journals, they say that AI-assisted copy editing, and I'm quoting, does not need to be declared. Whereas Taylor and Francis publishing house, they say any use of generative AI must be clearly acknowledged. So I think either way, these differences make it very difficult for us, for the research community, to know exactly how to comply and to understand what is ethical disclosure. What do we mean with ethical disclosure? Because depending on where you publish, you may need to disclose different things in different places within your manuscript. And this can lead to varied and potentially inadequate disclosure, depending on what is considered as the gold standard, what is considered as ethical disclosure. And I think this may become particularly challenging when you are navigating or between different journals or trying to resubmit your paper from a paper that has been rejected here to another paper, to another journal somewhere else that may endorse a different policy or may endorse ICMJE or WAME policies. And these are all very confusing and frustrating for research community. And that is why I said the paper we wrote was well received, but it didn't solve the problem, because all these organizations have come up with different policies about the use and disclosure. When it comes to the appropriate use of generative AI in writing, I think at the moment there is a consensus about certain issues, and I'm going to list them here. One of them is that generative AI should not be named as authors. So when ChatGPT was released, we had like a couple of papers that were published in like December of 2022, January 2023, February 2023, that named ChatGPT as an author, and most of them have been corrected or retracted because very soon people came to the conclusion that this is not allowed. And there was a lot of experts who said, because AI cannot be responsible or accountable for the content, it cannot be an author. Like, authorship is not just about attribution of credit. The other side of the coin is attribution of responsibilities. And because AI doesn't have the moral agency, doesn't have free will consciousness, cannot be sanctioned and all of that, we cannot name AI an author. So ChatGPT cannot be an author. The second one is that we are responsible for identifying, describing, reducing, and controlling biases and random errors. Even if you use ChatGPT for writing, the biases can still be demonstrated in different ways. I've seen a lot of people who have experimented with ChatGPT to show some of these biases. One of them was a person who used ChatGPT to write a paragraph about advantages and disadvantages of using AI in research, and the advantages part are a lot meatier. They're like a lot more extensive, whereas the disadvantages or risks are a lot shorter. That's an instance of bias. It is constantly positive, over positive about the importance and impact of generative AI in research. And we are ultimately responsible for that. We are ultimately responsible for also reducing it. The third one is disclosure. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, there's all kinds of disclosure policies. And that is why we need to plan our use of generative AI. So instead of just haphazardly, randomly using generative AI in publications, we need to be a lot more intentional and plan for the use. Like if you know what journal you want to publish in, check beforehand what disclosure policy, what use policy they have, and communicate that within your team so that everybody knows what the deal is when we are going to submit our paper to this journal. The fourth one is that you're only going to use AI. You should only use AI in situations where you have sufficient expertise or judgment. And with this, we mean don't use AI in contexts where you have no knowledge. Like I can use ChatGPT to write an introduction about, I don't know, uh, astrophysics. It does it. But do I have the expertise? Do I have the knowledge to see errors and biases in that? No, I don't, because I don't have an astrophysics background. And the same can happen when we work with other people. Like if you're working in a team of people, like multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary team working on a paper, you may use generative AI, for instance, to review what someone else has read, but then because you don't have the knowledge, you cannot see the flaws, you cannot see the mistakes. So that is why we have promoted this suggestion that you should only use it in areas where you have sufficient expertise. And also, lastly, you should not intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly commit plagiarism. And if you do, you are liable for misconduct. So it's very important to make sure that if you're using generative AI for generating text or even for refining text, we cannot always determine with 100% certainty that the generated text or the refined text is not plagiarized. There are some plagiarism detection softwares like Authenticate. Some people have access to those that are paid. Some people have access to free software. But either way, plagiarism detection will remain a major challenge. And unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have a very good solution to address that problem. My plan for like the next 10, 15 minutes is to basically open the paid version of ChatGPT and do a couple of prompts and show you some ways in which people have disclosed their use of ChatGPT in the literature. But before I do that, is there any questions, any thoughts, any burning issues that need to be discussed at this point?
Okay, so hello, my name is Bushra Intihab and I am a double major graduate student at Department of Physics. So I was really confused with the ethical disclosure because I use AI for the literature review of a paper, like to understand a summary what the other author did in that paper to make a summary that maybe it is useful for my research or not. So how would I disclose that thing in the paper?
Well, you should disclose that use based on what the target journal demands. If I were you, I would disclose the use as, like you're using it for a literature review, you want to summarize the papers with it. I would disclose that in the method section and cite ChatGPT, mention who used it. I will show you an example of a similar example that has mentioned ChatGPT in the method section. and has cited it. And that is, if I were you, I would disclose it in that way. But also, this is all ultimately dependent on what the target journal demands.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Um, Hello, Dr. Mohammed. I'm Akhil Valala from Florida Atlantic University. I'm currently pursuing masters in data science. I'm training in a LLM for the particular subject like physics, maths, and how would I verify that it is? How would I test or verify whether it is behaving ethically for the particular, like it's mainly for the college and uh, college students. So how can I verify the ethics of the AI model?
Um, can you be more specific with what you mean with verifying the ethics of AI model? Like, what do you want to verify?
Like for example, if they're trying to copy or something like that, if you, for example, if you paste the image of the multiple choice question, the ChatGPT will identify like this is the question, means this is an exam question and you cannot answer. I means I cannot give you the direct answer. So it will identify the like that for a few of these questions. So how can I make sure model behaving in ethical way?
Right. I think this is an interesting use case, and I can provide a better answer when I know more about it,
Okay.
and learn exactly what it does and what it doesn't. So, if you want, you can send an email and we can book a short time to discuss it after the session. If that works for you, I will share my email address at the end, so you can reach out and we can discuss it at greater length.
Sure, Dr. Mohammed. I already sent you an LinkedIn connection. I'll drop you an email too.
Perfect. Thank
Thank
you.
Hi, I do have a question, and it regards the what's tending to happen now, and it's happening at a really fast pace where AI is actually in the background of another application, and it may or may not be powered by ChatGPT. It may be an internal system like Copilot is to Office 365. But, in Grammarly, people often use Grammarly. It's got a lot of AI in the background now, and I'm sure it's just going to get more and more pervasive with regard to like typical writing tools that someone's using. If they're also taking advantage of Copilot at the same time that they're writing in Word, for example, how does that work into it once these things become more and more common in the background? In terms of reporting that it
Right.
may have been used or was used.
Right. I think that's a great question, and it's a question that is going to become only more relevant because, to your point, it is going to be integrated into all kinds of systems, like Microsoft Word being, or other kinds of word processors being the prime example. Um, the position we have at the moment is that as long as your use has been intentional, you have to disclose it. And with that, I mean, um, for instance, we know that PubMed also uses all kinds of AI technologies, but I don't specifically um, ask PubMed to use an AI model. I cannot also opt out of how the current use case may use AI or not. So in that sense, it is not up to me to decide how to use PubMed. And PubMed under the hood might use AI, but that is not up to me. As long as I say I use PubMed, that is fine. Specific to Grammarly or Microsoft Word or other word processors, this is a moving target. We don't know how it's going to happen, and we don't know how it's going to be received by the community. I know that many people are already using Copilot, and my current suggestion is that if you use it in a meaningful way, um, disclose it. I think there is this sort of almost stigma around disclosure. I've heard people who say, "Oh, you know what? I feel that if I disclose my use of generative AI, people would think less of me as a researcher." And I think that says something about the academic culture and how we judge each other, whereas disclosure in and of itself should not be stigmatized. Like I use Microsoft Excel, and if I use Microsoft Excel in a research project, I disclose it. There's no stigma or shame around it. But when it comes to generative AI, I think because of the sort of initial backlash and hype around it, people are still kind of figuring out their own position. I have a position around it. I have shared it in publications and stuff, but I think every one of us needs to have a position around it. What is my position with regards to these tools? How am I going to use them? How am I going to disclose them, regardless of what journal publisher may demand? I've seen people who have also added like a line to their signature that says, to their email signature that says, I use AI to refine and improve the text, but I don't disclose any names or any identities. I think that's a very responsible and sort of progressive way of using it and also disclosing it, even in cases where you don't have to disclose. Like we see more and more people using AI for writing emails or for improving their emails, but we rarely see people disclose that. So I think that goes back to your personal position and personal view about it.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's.
I'm sorry, as you're transitioning, if I could just also just ask a question because I've encountered it with students in school. I know that they have software that people run things through. We've had a few instances where kids, it's come up that a text was AI generated, but then we'll get kickback from parents that say, no, I saw them writing it. I've kind of played with it a little bit just to see what it looks like when you run things through these tools. I've only used the free tools. How, and I know you're more at the collegiate level, but how or what process or when somebody challenges that and that something is AI, what processes are there or how does somebody work through that?
I'm sorry, I don't know what happened, but Zoom kicked me out.
I'm sorry, I'll repeat, I'll try to make it shorter. Basically, when somebody if somebody's paper or their product comes up as AI generated, but they're saying it's not, what is the process or what does that look like? And are you seeing that at the collegiate level? I'm at a high school and I see it with some of our kids where they will, someone will run it through Turnitin or what have you, and it will come back AI generated, but then we'll get pushback by parents who say, no, I was right there when they wrote it. I've played around with some tools and sometimes it'll come up and say, oh, because of the quality of writing, it may kick back as AI. I've also seen some research on the biases against English language learners that a lot of times their stuff comes up as AI generated. And what is the process or at this time of how to deal with those challenges?
Yeah, it's spot on. At the moment, like I'm a journal editor, and we see that also. Like we see papers that, hands down, I can say with 100% certainty that they have used AI, but they have not disclosed it. And the journal has a policy that if you use it, you should disclose it. It's fine, just disclose it. Um, and people don't do that. And at the moment, we don't have a very straightforward process of dealing with it, to be honest. Yeah, I think at a high school level, that's even more challenging because you're dealing with minors, but we also see the same pattern with adults. So it's a great question, but honestly, I don't have a response to it. But we are facing the same issues at a journal level, which is like, the higher standard. It's like peer reviewed. You're expected to adhere to certain norms and stuff. But we see the same problem.
Thank you. I definitely think it's going to be a problem for a while. I was hoping you had a quick solution.
No, no, but it's a great question, totally. So, just to play a little bit with generative AI, I have prepared some uh, fun stuff to do. So, I hope you can see my browser. This is the paid version of ChatGPT. I can choose between GPT 4.0, GPT with Canvas, O1 preview, O1 mini. These are like different versions. At the moment, the 4.0 I think is the strongest one. This is a paper we recently published in the Journal of Quantitative Science Studies. It explores the intersection of open science and generative AI. And I'm just going to copy paste the abstract here and say, are there any grammar mistakes in this abstract? If yes, highlight and explain why it is a mistake. Okay. Okay, so this is one way of using it. This is a published paper recently published. Comma after practices. It says, yeah, you're missing a comma. List in data curation analysis. This is one way of using it to just copy or paste and say, what is wrong with this? Or is this clear? Like, we can copy a sentence from here and say, so here it generated the revised abstract with with these 5 issues already addressed. I can also say, is this clear? If not, provide 5 ways of making it clearer. The sentence is generally clear, but it may be clearer, more concise. Here are 5 ways to improve clarity. So this is another way, like, now I'm using generative AI almost like a dictionary. Like if you open a dictionary and search for the meaning of, I don't know, a word you don't know, so many of the words in English language and many other languages may have more than 5 or 10 definitions, like even verbs like take, have. They can have many more definitions. The dictionary doesn't know and will not tell you what definition is right for your context. Now I'm using generative AI like that. I'm asking generative AI to produce 5 different versions of this sentence, and then it's up to me to decide which revised version is the better one. And in this sense, I think we are entering a different space of using technology because we are the ultimate decision maker. We don't leave decision making to AI. We kind of we take back authority and autonomy from generative AI by creating space for ourselves to choose. This is what I'm doing now. I asked it to generate 5 different ways, and then it is up to me to choose the one that I think is the best. So here, remove the comma, simplify tools, platform, so on. So these are just, some of the ways we can use it. And I'm going to show you also how it is being disclosed in different publications. So for instance, this one. This is a paper published here. So these people have mentioned it in their, I think, introduction. Here they say ChatGPT was used to improve the selection of criteria to get better results from AS review. And then they go on. How I would improve this would be by citing ChatGPT and mentioning who used ChatGPT. The reason why it's important to mention who used ChatGPT is because if you look at here, my interaction with ChatGPT is saved on my user account. And there's different ways of sharing this. ChatGPT also allows you to share a link to it. It allows you to create a PDF of it, to archive it. But we need to know who used it. And if you're in a collaborative context, you want to know who used ChatGPT in what way. So that is how I would improve this. I think this is good. They have mentioned it in the method section, like as part of the screening. Um, but I would have also cited it and added a reference to it. This one, published in PNAS. Oh, uh, I don't know. For some reason, it's not showing the paper I was hoping for. This one in the acknowledgement section. So this is a paper that is published in the Journal of Biological Conservation. And in the acknowledgement section, they say ChatGPT was used to improve language. I'm grateful to two anonymous referees. Um, Again, here I would use, I think it has more than one author. No, it is one author, so it doesn't matter. But I would specify what version of ChatGPT, which they have, version 3.5. So this is good. This is if the journal is happy with this, this is good. Another one. This is published in a journal in the Journal of Curious. Has two authors, and the disclosure of ChatGPT is ChatGPT was used to improve the readability and language of the manuscript, and subsequently the authors revised and edited the content produced by AI tools as necessary, taking full responsibility for the ultimate content of the present manuscript. So this is another way of disclosing it. Again, in the acknowledgement section, they say that we used it to improve readability. Let's look at this one. Here it is in a footnote where they have explained who did what. And then they say ChatGPT was used to improve the sentence structure. The authors wrote, all the original sentences, ChatGPT was prompted to improve the structure of several sentences that the authors deemed could be further improved. So this is a little bit more specific. These people are saying that we wrote it ourselves and there were a couple of sentences that we thought could be improved. That's why we use ChatGPT. The problem here is that they don't say who used it and they don't say what version of ChatGPT they used. So they don't cite ChatGPT, like the other paper that did do that. Um, Here, in the present study, the free version of ChatGPT was used to answer questions, and all the answers were submitted by 15 November 2023. So these people also highlight a date, which is extremely important because generative models keep improving. And it is very important to mention at what date we used it, because when it comes to, in the worst case scenario, when things go wrong, you want to have as much details as possible. You want to specify what date you use ChatGPT and who did that and what prompt was used. Like this time they don't provide the prompts, whereas in the previous one they did provide the prompts. So in every one of these, we see them doing something wrong and something not wrong, not right. Um, this is another paper that I was involved in. We did a survey. And here in the method section, we say that ChatGPT was used to brainstorm survey questions with DL. So DL was one of the authors, David Leibovitz. DL used OpenAI ChatGPT on the 27th of January 2023 at 6:06 p.m. Central Time using the following prompt. Please create several questions for medical students, medical residents, and medical faculty members to answer regarding ideas for use and attitudes surrounding use of ChatGPT in education and research. And then we cited ChatGPT. I think this is like as detailed as you can do it to explain who used it, when, for what purpose, and also provide the prompt and also cite it in text and add it to the references. This is like as good as it gets, not because I did it, because we really thought about how to do it in an ethical way. So I hope that some of these examples give you an idea of how other people are using and disclosing it. And I hope that my commentary also provided some help in terms of how to improve the existing practices. I think we are, yeah, it's now 5 to 11 my time. I was hoping that we can use the rest of the time for Q&A. Let me just see if I have anything else to add here. Um, yeah, two questions. So these two questions were submitted prior to the presentation. Um, the first one is something that we already somehow touched on, the journal editor's role to ensure that AI is or isn't being used. Um, my suggestion is that the only thing the journal editors can do at this point is to be clear about their own policies. We have seen, as I mentioned, different policies about the use and disclosure. When it comes to disclosure, some journals say mention it in the cover letter, some journals say mention it in the acknowledgement section, and some, like Science, say mention it in the cover letter, mention it in the body of the text, cite it, and then also add it to the references. So I think this is up to journal editors to decide what policy they want to endorse, depending on what context they are in and what kind of submissions they receive. But in terms of enforcing it, we are we are in a we are not in an easy place because we cannot police this. And that is one of the challenges with transparency, because a lot of the times people say, well, if you can't police it, so what's the purpose of um, developing the policy in the first place? And the response is, well, science is a trust-based ecosystem. We expect that people do the right thing. And if they don't, well, it's a loss for them. It's a loss for the integrity of their own work. It's not for me to police that, and I cannot police that. So in this sense, this is in a way, I think, requires more collaboration and a sort of team effort. We hope that institutions can support this. And to your institution's credit, I checked their AI page. I think it's better than many other institutions I have seen. Like, it's very intuitive, and there's a lot of good examples. I didn't specifically find a very detailed policy about use of AI in research, but there was a lot of good resources there that I have found very useful as well. The second question was, at what point in the writing of an article is the use of AI too much? How will we be able to define the limits? I think this is a great question. What is too much, I think, depends on the context. I would not recommend using generative AI to write the first draft of anything, like be it an introduction, be it a method section, be it discussion. Don't use generative AI to write the first draft. Always try to use your own words. And if you think they are not good enough, you can use AI to improve it if you want to. Um, but we don't have to. I think there's this now almost like a because there's a hype and because everybody is using it, many people might have the sort of fear of missing out. Oh my God, what happens if I don't use AI? Maybe my paper would not be accepted. No, your paper will still be accepted with its grammar mistakes and I don't know, all the issues that it has, because it was already being published before we had AI. So the fact that we have AI doesn't mean that we have to use it all the time or we have to use it for every paper. It just means that those who are interested in using it may use it if they want to, and if the journal that they want to publish in allows. So yeah, don't use AI. That's my recommendation. Don't use AI to write the first draft of anything. That is too much. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this. And I look forward to having more engagement and conversation. And this is my
Mohammed, there were a couple of questions from the chat.
Yeah.
If I can read them to you. So Dr. Barsky asks, if you are reviewing an article for a journal, what are your thoughts about using ChatGPT or generative AI to review the article for the purposes of blind peer review? And
So
then
that is
Abigail Perkins has followed up with how that might affect training data and subsequent reviews.
Yeah, that is a very good question. Peer review is one of those instances that has like the use of ChatGPT in peer review has attracted a lot of attention and a lot of thought. We like very early on, like last year around I think February, we published this paper about the use of generative AI in peer review. Since then, a lot has changed. a lot of the publishers don't allow the use of generative AI for peer reviews. So if you do it, it is against the journal policy. You cannot just copy paste a sentence from an unpublished paper into your generative AI and ask it to help you with review. What's more, some publishers, like for instance Elsevier, they have said that not only you are not allowed to copy paste pieces of an unpublished paper into generative AI, you're also not allowed to copy your review of a paper to improve and enhance grammar and so on. So you cannot even use it to improve your own writing when it comes to peer review practices. So peer review is one of those challenging areas. I can imagine that generative AI could be very helpful, but because they use our prompts, they use our data to train their models, because we are not sure what they do with our data and how they may sell or resell or um, abuse even our data. The use of generative AI in peer review context is strictly regulated, and we are not allowed to use it, unfortunately.
Dr. Barsky also wants to know if there is a good website or source that keeps track of which AI programs are best suited for which purposes.
Honestly, I found what the Florida Atlantic University had quite useful. So I think under the AI page, there was like um section called AI tools, AI assisted tools. And then you had a really good overview of what kind of tools you can use for what purposes. I can share the link with you. And I thought this was one of the things I thought was really good in your website, because it's like a very good overview of what is allowed, what is paid, what is unpaid, and for what purposes you should use what. So I thought that was very helpful.
Thank you for the compliment. Are there any other questions for Mohammed?
I have a question, and I don't know if this moves into a different realm, but I am an assistant professor at FAU in the social work department, and I was wondering if you have any insights on ethical practices of using AI for grant writing. So, writing the innovation section of a grant or helping write whole sections of a grant. Because I know I haven't used it in this way, but I know, grants are not actual published works. So I'm wondering if you have any recommendations on ways we could use this tool during the grant writing process.
I think as long as you are not compromising your own ideas, yeah, why not? To improve grammar, to enhance your writing, sure. And I have not seen any specific policy from funders like the NIH or NSF that says, oh, you are not allowed to use generative AI for writing your grant. There's all kinds of bans on using generative AI for reviewing grants, but not for writing your grant. So I think as long as you're not compromising your own idea, um, sure, to use it to your benefit. But be careful that any of these commercial models may use your data and may use your idea. They definitely know from your IP address that you're a researcher. So you're not being seen by them as just another user. You are seen as a sort of, I don't know, maybe valuable user, and whatever prompt you may input may go through a different processing model compared with someone who uses generative AI to create recommendations for the next trip to Italy, So they know who you are, and they know that you may be working with all kinds of new ideas and technology and so on. So they might follow you in a different way. That's what I'm trying to say. So as long as you're not compromising yourself, sure.
Great, thank you.
All right. If there are no further questions, I think we can wrap it up. And we do have this session recorded, so we will be posting that through our Research Roundtable webpage. I would like to give a very full-hearted thanks to Mohammed for taking the time to meet with me prior and put together this information and present to us. So thank you very much for doing this, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank
All
you.
right.
And I also wanted to thank you, Miss Courtney, for the other week
Thank
you were
you.
with our class. And
Oh,
thank you
no.
for the information. That was awesome. Thank
I'm
you.
happy to do it.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.